Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakio. Thanks for joining me for meditation and sutra study. This evening's practice will consist of a 15-minute guided meditation, a reading from the Nirvana Sutra, followed by a Dharma talk. Before we get into that, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified when I post talks in the future. Also, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that'd be great too. So, as we move into this evening's guided meditation, I'll give you a moment to get into position. The only rule is you need to be comfortable. You need to be in a position that you can hold without moving for at least 15 minutes. If you need to lay down, that's fine, but please don't fall asleep. If you'd like some instruction, back straight, chin slightly tucked so that you can breathe easily. Left hand goes palm up in the lap. Right hand goes atop the left. Eyes can be closed, or if we prefer to keep them open, keep them pointed down at a 45-degree angle. That way we can eliminate visual distractions. And we'll begin this meditation as we always do, simply with the breath. Breathing in and out through the nose. Breathe in this way through the nostrils and signal to our body that we're safe, that we can relax. And it's okay to do nothing for a while. And as we're breathing in and out through the nose, on every inhale, we extend the belly button ever so slightly, like we just had a large meal. This creates space for our diaphragm to expand, giving us a full lung full of air. Once again, signaling to the body that we're safe, that we can relax, allowing ourselves to drop into deeper states of concentration. And finally, if we're wondering what to do with our thoughts, we'll simply focus on the physical sensation of our breathing. The feeling of air moving in and out of our lungs. The expansion and contraction of the diaphragm. The movement of the belly button. If our minds wander, that's fine. It's what minds do. We simply say hello to our thoughts and bring our focus back to the meditation and the physical sensations of the breath. We'll do this for about a minute. I'll keep time. No need to worry about that. Excellent. Now as we continue breathing in and out through the nose, expanding the belly button on every inhale, relaxing on every exhale, we'll add a visualization to this exercise. We'll envision a fire burning in our belly, in that space right behind our belly button. This fire is our favorite color. If we like blue, the fire is blue. If we like red, the fire is red. And it represents our spiritual power. With every inhale, we'll visualize ourselves breathing in through the nose. With every exhale, we visualize ourselves blowing on that fire, breathing out through the nose and blowing on it, just like we would a campfire in the woods. Feeding our spiritual energy and making it bigger and brighter with every breath. We'll do this for about 2 minutes. I'll keep time. No need to worry about that. We'll just breathe. Blowing on this fire. Expanding our spiritual energy with every breath. Good work. Keep breathing. In and out through the nose. Pushing the belly button out on the inhale, relaxing on the exhale. Visualizing ourselves blowing on that fire in our belly, making it bigger with every breath. Now we'll continue with the visualization, sending a channel of energy down from our belly, down, down, down to the center of the earth. And once we get there, we find an energy that's identical to our own. If our spiritual energy is blue, the earth's energy is blue. If our energy is red, the earth's energy is red. we'll slowly begin to pull that energy up into ourselves. With every inhale, we pull energy up from the earth, storing it in our belly, and every exhale, we blow on that fire, amplifying the energy we receive, making it even bigger and brighter than it was before. With every inhale, we pull energy up. With every exhale, we amplify it, noticing that even as we take from the earth is not depleted. The more it gives, the more it has to give. We'll do this for about a minute. I'll keep time. And if our minds wander, that's okay. We simply say hello to our thoughts and bring our focus back to the breathing and the visualization. Great work. Everyone's sitting so quietly and so still, empowering each other through their practice. Now we'll continue with that practice by setting a second channel of energy up from our belly, up, past our solar plexus, past our throat, past our forehead, all the way up to the top of our head. And as we continue breathing in and out through the nose, on every inhale, we'll pull energy up from the earth, storing it in our belly, just like we did before, only now, on every exhale, we'll visualize that energy being pushed up, past the solar plexus, past the throat, past the forehead, until it explodes out of the top of our forehead, or top of our head, like a volcano. Showering every inch of our body with healing spiritual light. Nourishing us and enlivening us with spiritual power. We breathe in, energy comes up from the earth into our belly. We breathe out, it goes up, out of the top of our heads like a volcano, and comes down on every inch of us. And we'll just breathe like this for a minute. I'll keep time, covering ourselves in healing light. And if our minds wander, we say hello to our thoughts and come back to the breathing and the visualization. Wonderful. Great work, everyone, truly. Now it's time to slowly and gently bring our meditation to a close. We'll start by pulling our spiritual energy back into ourselves, closing off that opening at the top of our heads. With every breath, our energy from the earth barely reaches our nose. Then it stops at our throat, our solar plexus, until finally it rests gently in our belly. And once that energy channel is closed, we send our focus to the channel of energy going down to the earth. Perhaps we do a silent bow in our minds, thanking the earth for its help, remembering that the Buddha reached down to the earth at the moment of his enlightenment. Now we've done the same. We pull that channel of energy up, up, up into ourselves until our focus is rested solely in our belly and the fire that lies therein. Noticing that that energy is always there to call upon if we need it. We thank ourselves for our practice. Now we slowly come back into our bodies, moving our heads to the left and then to the right. Back and forth, back and forth. Until finally we come back to center. We roll our full shoulders forward and back. Slowly and gently, focusing on the physical sensations, until finally they rest, drooping gently down to the earth. And when we're ready, only when we're ready, if our eyes are closed, we open them. I'll give you about 20 seconds to do that. Wonderful. Thank you so much for engaging in that practice with me. The energy of meditation is always more powerful when we do it with others. So I appreciate you helping me with my practice, as I hope I help you with yours each time we do this. Now we'll do tonight's Suture reading. Again, we're reading from the Nirvana Sutra. It is the BDK English Tripitaka translation. Not necessary to have a copy of the sutra, but it can be useful if you'd like to follow along. Tonight's reading starts at page 220. Kashyapa then said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, now for the first time I understand the distinction between what Maras preach and what Buddhas preach. As a result, I feel that I am able to enter into the deep significance of the Buddhist Dharma." The Buddha praised Kashyapa, saying, "Excellent, excellent, good man. I see that this distinction has been clarified for you. This I call wise. Good man, what is commonly known as suffering or dukkha does not refer to the so-called First Noble Truth. Why is this? Because if the usual use of suffering referred to the noble truth of suffering, it would mean that all cows, sheep, mules, horses, and even beings in hell would have noble truths. Good man, if someone did not understand that the profound realm of a Tathagata is that of a subtle and mysterious Dharma body in which he abides permanently and immutably, that person might say he has a body that eats, not a Dharma body. Such a person does not understand either the virtue or the majesty of the Tathagata. This is what I call suffering. Why? Because it is out of ignorance that a person regards what is proper, Dharma, as what is improper, adharma, and regards what is improper as proper. It should be understood that whoever makes mistakes like this will surely fall into one of the unfortunate realms as they migrate through samsara. This will only increase their bonds to the cycle of rebirth, and they will have to endure many hardships. When on the other hand, one is able to realize the fact that the Tathagata abides permanently and immutably, then by merely hearing the sound of the two words abides permanently, even once, that person will be directly reborn in the heavens. Later, at the time of their liberation, they will be able to witness the fact that the Tathagata abides permanently and is immutable. And having attested to this, they will say, in the past, I have only heard about this, but now I have gained liberation and thereupon witnessed it myself. Because I was ignorant of the ultimate reality, I continued to revolve in the cycle of birth and death, seemingly with no end. But today, I have finally achieved true understanding. When one has understood in this way, they truly appreciate the implications of dukkha, the benefits of which are substantial. But in the absence of such understanding, no matter how diligent one's practice may be, there will be no benefit. This I call understanding dukkha, or the noble truth of suffering. But for individuals unable to cultivate understanding in this way, what they call suffering will not be the noble truth of suffering. The second noble truth of the causes of suffering denotes that what happens when genuine understanding of the genuine Dharma does not take place. It is when one accepts impure things such as slaves, effectively taking what is improper and saying, this is the true Dharma. Vitiating the true Dharma prevents it from abiding for any length of time, and under these conditions, there will be no understanding of the natural conditions that are dharmata. It is owing to that fundamental ignorance that one transmigrates through samsara, incurring much suffering and anxiety, unable to gain either rebirth in the heavens or liberation proper. One who fully recognizes the true Dharma does not damage it, and under those conditions gains rebirth in the heavens or liberation proper. For one who does not recognize the reasoning and the truth of how samsara is caused, the true Dharma will not permanently abide. In every way, it will be a disappearing Dharma. Under these conditions, individuals will experience much pain and anguish in the process of transmigration that continues for innumerable kalpas. For someone can succeed in recognizing the Dharma that abides permanently in a way no different from any other time or place. That I would call understanding the causes or the noble truth of the causes of suffering. But for the individual unable to cultivate understanding in this way, what are called the causes will not be the noble truth of the causes of suffering. The third noble truth is the destruction of suffering. If one diligently practices and studies the Dharma of emptiness, this will not do. Why? Because eliminating all dharmas also destroys the true Dharma treasury of the Tathagata. To practice and study like this, I call cultivating emptiness. But does cultivating the destruction of suffering in this way contrast with all the other paths that are heretical. One may speak of the cultivation of emptiness as the truth of the destruction of suffering, but the heretical paths also cultivate a dharma of emptiness as well, and assert it must be the truth of the destruction of suffering. If one were to assert there is a Tathagata, and even though it cannot be seen, it is capable of eliminating all defilements, which is the point at which one comprehends it, then upon bringing forth this state of mind by the conditions wrought by this single thought, one can attain freedom in all dharmas. For one whose meditation focuses on non-self and empty kissions, as the hidden treasury of the Tathagata, however, there will be innumerable transmigrations and the incurring of suffering throughout. Those who do not approach practice in that way, despite the presence of the defilements within themselves, will find those defilements quickly eliminated. How could this be? It happens through the understanding of the Tathagata hidden treasury. And this is what I call the noble truth of the destruction of suffering. Anyone who is able to practice the destruction of suffering in this way is a true disciple of mine. Anyone who is not able to practice in this way, I regard as someone cultivating emptiness, which does not lead to the noble truth of the destruction of suffering. The fourth noble truth of the path refers to the three jewels of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and also includes liberation proper. There are those living beings, however, with misconceptions in the form of inversions of their thinking, who say, there is no Buddha, Dharma, or Sangha, nor is there any liberation. The notion of transmigrating in samsara is just an illusion. If someone were to cultivate this way of seeing things, it would lead to incurring significant suffering throughout that person's transmigration in the triple world. But those who can arrive at a perspective in which the Tathagata is permanently abiding and immutable, and see the Dharma, Sangha, and liberation likewise, will ride that single thought to a resultant freedom for countless lifetimes, obtained at their whim. Why is this? In the past, I also held four inverted views, taking what was not Dharma and reckoning it as Dharma, for which I received bad karmic fruition beyond measure. It is because I have already eliminated all such thinking that I have attained the complete awakening of a Buddha. This is called the fourth noble truth of the path. Now, if there are people who assert that the three jewels are impermanent and cultivate that viewpoint, such practice based on falsehood will not bring the noble truth of the path. But if someone cultivates the notion that the Dharma permanently abides, that person would be my disciple. To practice the Four Noble Truths in a way that is based on true seeing, this is what I call the Four Noble Truths. The Bodhisattva Kashyapa then addressed the Buddha, saying, "World-honored one, I now understand for the first time how to practice the Dharma of the profound Four Noble Truths." Good stuff. So, the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism state, we just went through them, but very succinctly, what do they say? They say life is suffering. Suffering is caused by desire. The way to end suffering is to end desire. And the way to end desire is the Noble Eightfold Path. So that's the short version of what we just read. But the Buddha, in his wisdom and compassion, gives a much more nuanced view of the Four Noble Truths than what we normally understand. He says that dukkha, suffering, is not the same suffering that cows, chickens, pigs, etc. experience. In other words, there is the mundane suffering of everyday life, which is real, which is addressed through Buddhism, through the Four Noble Truths, but there is a more nuanced view of suffering, right? So there's the suffering we experience in everyday life, and there's the reason behind that suffering. And that's what Buddha is talking about here. He's not saying that everyday suffering doesn't exist, just that that's not the end of the story. So what is the root cause of our suffering in this Saha world? Well, it's ignorance. And of course, that question is ignorance of what? It's ignorance of the Tathagata Garbha, the womb matrix of Buddha, which is permanent and abiding, and by extension, ignorance of Buddha nature, our own Buddha nature and the Buddha nature of others. This is the existential suffering. This is the existential crisis that is at the root of our transmigration through the Saha world. This is why nothing ever feels quite right. Or even if it's a beautiful day outside and we're relaxed and there's no actual problems, there's still that voice in our head that says, oh, but what if? And we suffer in this way because we are ignorant again of our true nature and the true nature of the world. This lesson is reflected in the Lakavattara Sutra, in which we are told that there are three objects which cause our transmigration through samsara. There is ignorance, there is desire, and then there's karma. Ignorance of our true self, ignorance of our Buddha nature, leads to desire. We want because we think we're lacking. And that feeling of lack causes us to do things that are unskillful, which leads to negative karma, which then builds up and leads to more ignorance, which leads to more desire, which leads to more karma. And now we have the cycle of suffering. Ignorance, desire, karma, ignorance, desire, karma, over and over again. Which is exactly what the Buddha is talking about here. It's just broken down a little bit more succinctly. So it's not the washing the dishes that is our cause of suffering, though it feels that way. It's our ignorance of the Buddha nature of the dishes that causes our suffering. Because if we truly understand that all things are part of the Dharma body, that all things are Buddha, then we honor and venerate the dishes just like we honor and venerate the Buddha on our altars, just like we honor and venerate, hopefully, the Buddha within ourselves, just like we honor and venerate the Buddha within other people. But because we are ignorant of this fact, ignorant of Buddha, we suffer. So we deal with the mundane, everyday suffering of life through expedient means, bowing, chanting, meditation, right speech, right action, right livelihood, so we can slowly wipe away those defilements that we've accumulated through our desires, through our negative karma, so that we can slowly but surely see the Buddha in all things. Another portion of the Nirvana Sutra, the Buddha describes this using the analogy of a great athlete who's in a wrestling match, and he has a shining jewel in his forehead. And he's so involved in the match, he's fighting so fiercely that the jewel gets shoved inside of his head. He can't see it. It's still there, it's still shining forth, but he doesn't know it's there. He lost his jewel, he thinks. So he goes to a physician. He's terrified. What happened to my diamond? What's this scar in my forehead? And the physician tells him over and over again, you're fine. I'm looking right at it. The jewel's still there. The wrestler says, no, I can't touch it. I can't see it. So the physician eventually holds up a mirror. And now the wrestler, the great athlete, can see his Dharma jewel, which never really disappeared. It was just hidden because he was fighting so fiercely in the arena that it went away. It took the expedient means of the mirror in order for him to see it again. And suddenly his suffering went away and he relaxed. The Buddha is saying that the Dharma is the expedient means which allows us to see the diamond we all carry in our forehead, our Buddhahood. Now, what does this have to do with bad people? Well, there's another item that the Buddha discusses here, which is the teaching of emptiness, which shunyata, emptiness, is a teaching of the Dharma. It's a very important one. Unfortunately, it's one that's often misunderstood. People hear that all things are an illusion, all things are empty, and they think, well, nothing exists, nothing matters. There's no such thing as good or evil. And that's entirely untrue. This is why the Buddha tells us over and over again that the Tathagata is permanently abiding. So we have a North Star, a focal point that says this is good. And thus, if we know what is good, the Dharma is good, the Noble Eightfold Path is good, the Four Noble Truths are good, then we also know what's bad. The things that are not of Buddha, that are not of our Buddha nature, they're not in keeping with the teachings of the Dharma. This is why we have things like the 5 lay precepts. We refrain from killing because we know murdering people is bad. We refrain from stealing because we know taking things from people that don't belong to us, that's bad. But in the time of the Buddha, and this still happens today, people get a hold of this teaching of shunyata, this teaching of emptiness, and they think, well, there is no good or bad. I can do what I want, and it's all enlightenment. It's all the same. Sometimes this is called non-duality. What the Buddha is saying is that, yes, non-duality is a thing, but within that non-duality, there is a duality. There's a thing that is Buddha, and there's a things, plural, that are not Buddha. Part of the same whole? Yes, but not of the same quality. If I have 2 apples in front of me and one is rotten and one isn't, I still have 2 apples, but I don't eat the rotten one. But because we're human, because we have defilements, we try to twist the teachings to justify our bad behavior instead of changing it. So we take this teaching of emptiness, this idea that everything is nothing, and we think it means we can do whatever we want. And that's not what the Buddha is teaching. And he challenges us to realize that even though there is good and evil in the world, even people who misbehave are still Buddhas. They have Buddha nature just like we do. So our job as Buddhists isn't to pretend that the person punching us in the face isn't doing anything wrong. It isn't to pretend that things like racism, sexism, homophobia don't exist. Our job is to recognize that they exist, and out of compassion for the Buddha that's within all things, we work to correct these items. We feed the hungry. We clothe the naked. We provide healing for the sick. And at the same time, we do not cultivate, and this is the hard part, we don't cultivate negative feelings for the individuals who make those things happen. We see this in the example of the Buddha. His cousin, Devadatta, tried to kill him on multiple occasions. He tried to take over the Buddhist Sangha. on multiple occasions. Now, the Buddha did not allow himself to be killed. He didn't allow his cousin to take over the Sangha, but at the same time, he still treated his cousin well. The Buddha's homeland was invaded 3 times while he was alive. And each time he went to the offensive party that was invading and he spoke with them and tried to convince them to put down their swords. But he did not raise up an army of his own to fight against them. Which, remember, he was a prince. He very easily could have done that. In fact, it probably would have been easier because he was a spiritual holy man, because he had helped so many people out of suffering. He probably would have had an easier time raising an army than if he had never walked the spiritual path. But he didn't do that. He walked that middle way of working against the negativity of the world and still honoring the goodness of all people, including the ones that eventually wiped out his tribe. This isn't an easy walk, but it's the walk that's required of us if we're going to practice Buddhism. To both acknowledge the Buddha in people who cause us difficulties and at the same time work to ensure they don't cause suffering for ourselves or other people. And as we extend them this level of grace, we also extend that grace to ourselves, recognizing the Buddha within us, that sacred, holy, permanently abiding part of ourselves, and at the same time, understanding we still have some work to do. I am a Buddha, but I am an imperfect one. I am a Buddha, but I am also human, and as such, I have defilements. Not because there's anything inherently wrong or broken about me. The Dharma is very clear that our true self, our true nature, is pure and holy. But because we are ignorant of that nature, we accumulate karma, we accumulate defilements. Just like we have to wipe away the dust off of a mirror, we have to wipe away the defilements from our Buddha nature. But the Buddha nature never disappears completely. It never goes away. Just like the diamond in the wrestler's forehead never went away. He couldn't see it, but it was there. When we're dealing with bad or difficult people, it's okay to say this is wrong. It's okay to say that's not in keeping with the Dharma. That's hurting people. We're allowed to do that. The Buddha does that. Quite a bit, in fact. And at the same time, he states repeatedly in the Nirvana Sutra, he loves all beings as he loves his only son, Rahula. Again, we are all Buddhas, and we all have work to do. So when we meet difficult or challenging people in our lives, we do 2 things. 1, we recognize that we're dealing with a difficult or challenging person, and we recognize that this person is a Buddha. And then we use our inner wisdom, our creativity to figure out, okay, what am I going to do about this? How do I honor the Buddha in them and in myself at the same time? How do I work with this situation so I don't cause suffering for them unnecessarily, but I also don't cause suffering for myself unnecessarily? And this is where the creativity of the practice comes in. And I'm not going to tell you specifically how to do that because I don't know what your particular situation is, but I trust that you'll figure it out. I know you will, because all the wisdom you need is within you. We just need to clear away the defilements. Meditate a bit, chant a bit, do an offering at your altar, and then ask yourself, how should I deal with this situation? Generally speaking, I think more clearly after I meditate. So I recommend you try this. Does good and evil exist in the world? Absolutely. In this conventional world, this Saha world we live in, there are good people and bad people. But all of them are Buddhas. And that duality is difficult to carry, but we can carry it because we have two hands specifically for that purpose. And we must be careful to not twist the teaching of emptiness, well, everything is nothing, to convince ourselves that there's no separation, that there's no difference between what is Buddha and what is not Buddha, what is good and what is not good. Because if that were the case, there'd be no Dharma. If we destroy everything, then we also destroy the Dharma. Instead, we use the Dharma, we use the teaching of Buddha nature as our North Star to determine what is healthy and what is life-affirming. And once we figure that out, we move towards that thing in order to end suffering both for ourselves and all sentient beings. Amitabha. So that's the talk for today. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, comments for the Sangha, please leave them in the comment section below. If it's a question directed towards me, I promise I'll respond. And then I'll just make a few announcements before we end. So this is Meditation Sutra Study. We do it every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next week, we will be moving on from the Nirvana Sutra, and we will be starting our study of the Brahmasnet Sutra. We'll also be using the BDK English Tripitaka translation if you want to get a hold of that to follow along, but it's not required. We also do Dharma Sunday, which happens every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, same channel. That'll be slightly different. It'll just be a reading from something I find in popular culture, sports, media, etc. And then I'll do a Dharma talk, so slightly more straightforward in that case. So with that, until next time, Amitabha.